What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Welcome to another episode of Three for the Money. As we head into Christmas, I got my guy Stuckey, who was, I think, put on the earth for this moment. The college football playoffs. We got 4 games. It's crazy. I mean, the NFL's on Saturday with marquee teams. And I got to be real, they feel a little bit like an afterthought, even though, I mean, these games are pretty massive in the NFL with, the Chiefs need to, win a couple more to get the 1 seed. You got the Steelers and Ravens battling out for a division, but starting Saturday or Friday night in through all day Saturday, it's hard to beat this, Stuckey, man. I know as a college football, I would consider you an addict. This we've been waiting for these times for a long, long time, man.
Yeah, it all goes back to the NFL's desire to dominate the NBA and every holiday and every day. Because all 4 of these teams that play on Saturday are playing on Wednesday because they're like, we need to have Christmas days games. So you can't play them on Sunday. So if it wasn't for that, they probably wouldn't have done this. Um, but the NFL wants to dominate. And the problem, I actually disagree with the NFL doing it. I mean, they know better than me because you have these 2 marquee games while college football playoff is going on, which is going to be cool. I mean, you have, SMU-Penn State's at noon. It's well, Texans-Chiefs is at 1:15. Clemson-Texas is at 4. Steelers-Ravens is at 4:30. Tennessee-Ohio State's at 8 o'clock. Would have liked it a little better staggered, but that's a great day of football. But the problem is because the NFL wanted to have football on Christmas, they they ruined the. I mean, next Sunday. Have you seen next Sunday's slate, Week
I refuse.
17?
No, I
It
refuse to
is.
even
Here are
look
the
at it.
games. This is a whole Sunday slate of Week 17. Falcons at Commanders is at night. I guess that's intriguing to watch with. But that's your night game.
That's Sunday night football.
Yeah. Then you in the daytime you have Jets at Bills, Titans at Jags, Raiders at Saints, Colts at Giants, Panthers at Bucks, Packers at Vikings. There's your only good game. And then at 4 o'clock, you only have 2 games: Dolphins at Browns and Cowboys Eagles. Like that's as bad as luckily there's Packers Vikings, but that's as bad
Oh,
of a Sunday
oh,
slate as
because
you'll ever
not
see.
Niners Lions is Monday Night Football, huh?
Yep. Yeah. So and there's only 2 4 o'clock games. One of them's Dolphins Browns. The other one's with Cooper Rush. So yeah, I get why they're doing it. They just want to take over every holiday. But regardless, Saturday will be an epic day for football fans and for bettors like myself. I can't wait. I also can't wait for the Friday night game between Indiana and Notre Dame. That's a fun one. And I really just can't. I like every bowl game. People hate it because of the portal, but as a bettor, it's just opportunity. It's out like you can dig for info, get ahead of these line moves. Um, there's money to be made.
Who won the Cal UNLV game?
UNLV won. Cal was down to its third string quarterback. Mendoza went to the portal. The backup got hurt in the finale. They were down to the third string quarterback who got hurt, and then they had to go to their fourth string freshman who will look like he never threw a forward pass before. Um, and UNLV rallied to end a trend, a long trend of in this new portal era of 3 years running of teams without a coach hadn't won a single bowl game. I think they were 0 and 11, and until UNLV. But most of the UNLV players played. It looked like they cared,
Yeah.
except for Ricky White, their receiver who will get drafted. And it was competitive, but yeah, the Cal quarterback situation was a disaster.
I feel like UNLV is kind of an up and coming program with the NIL era because they hire Barry Odom, who's a real coach for a Mountain West program, and then they get Dan Mullen. I mean, you look at Washington State, who, Leach had enough, leaves, and then they just, elevate Rolovich, who then quits because he won't get the jab. And then what's his name? Dickert takes the job. He clearly understands like Washington State and Oregon State are probably lower than Boise at this point moving forward. So you look at UNLV, could they kind of take, essentially become Boise, Fresno State, and forever they sucked, and now it's like they're clearly spending some money. So like college football, man, it's obviously the big dogs, but even you see Alabama, their AD's begging for money. Notre Dame, their alumni is so big. UNLV just has this built-in money pit right behind them that people are just going to want to get involved. Uh, yeah, I just think we're in fascinating times.
Yeah, it's you look at some of these teams. I mean, UNLV, they also get to play in a football stadium. You're in Vegas. There's uh, a lot to like there. I mean, it's some of the money being thrown around. I don't know how sustainable it is, but
It can't be right.
yeah,
Paying Jackson Arnold $3 million, it just it's
John Mateer getting between 3 and 4 million reportedly. Who the Washington State quarterback, and Washington State is. I mean, that program is. I don't know where they're going to go. That bowl game. That was one. They play Syracuse. That's probably going to close like 18. They got all their starters in the portal. Mateer left. Their coach just left. Their coordinators are gone. Um, but
it sucks.
3 to 4 million for this guy, kid. He's good. He's not elite, John Mateer. I mean, Brock Purdy has made 3.5 million. Will make 3.5 million over the first 4 years of his deal in the NFL as a starting quarterback. I mean, it's pretty wild that you can. There's these players making more money than NFL starting quarterbacks, and they're not even like the elite of the elite guys.
Don't you
Wild
think
times.
that the Oklahoma thing, before we dive into these games, uh, one thing that used to happen in college basketball a lot because it was like you could be one and done, and a guy like if you could get so and so Anthony Davis. I remember Michael Porter, who went to Missouri, right? Am I thinking of the right guy? They hired his brother to
Hmm.
be the coach. That was when Quanzo Martin. I don't.
Yeah.
Is he still the coach there?
No, but
That yeah, it's like is that like Oklahoma? They hire the Wazoo offensive coordinator and then they get the quarterback. Like, is that a package deal to get the coordinator they want? I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't think I've watched a snap of Washington State, so I know nothing about this quarterback. But Jackson Arnold was just a top five recruit, and then a couple years later, he's just gone to Auburn, who another SEC school. It just seems like I don't know. People are just throwing shit at the wall, hopeful and they stick it. And the reality is the transfer portal, beside like the Caleb Downs and the no doubt about it, there is a complete randomness. Like if anyone knew that Scattaboo was going to be this good, he would not have ended up at Arizona State, right? He'd be the starting running back at like A&M
yeah.
or Michigan or something. But you're going to get some of these programs on a given year. Arizona State's a good example this year, but it could be Arizona or a Texas Tech or you name it, like any kind of mid-tier program in their own conference. If they hit on two or three transfer portal guys that then are just NFL players and their schedule breaks right, all of a sudden you're like, God, they're a 9 or 10 win team that everyone thought was going to win 4 or 5. You've been talking about this over unders in college. How the fuck would you know who Scattaboo was 2 years ago? No one would.
Yeah. But then if you don't hit for a couple of years,
Well, yeah, screw. It's the opposite. You could
then
even
you're
you could
done.
win
Like
one game.
and
Florida
then how are you
State.
going to get? And it becomes so much harder to draw kids if you just don't, if you're not one of the schools with an unlimited piggy bank. Yeah, it's fascinating. It has to be. It eventually has to be regulated. I don't know how that's going to happen, but it's the wild wild west right now. In college basketball, there's actually I think a potential trend. There's a team if you want a team to root for in March. I don't know if they'll make the tournament, but Drake, who usually
I
has
thought you
made
were
the
gonna say
tournament the
Green
past
Bay.
couple
Green
years.
Bay.
They play Gottlieb coming up, but they have one of the best coaches in the country. So what they did, and you can't do this in college football, but what we've seen it a couple times. We've seen like these teams at FCS level where like Western Kentucky did it with Bailey Zappi. You have these programs where their coordinator will come and all their skill position players with them. But what Drake did is there was a D2 powerhouse, Northwest Missouri State, I think, and their coach was really highly respected in inner circles of basketball. He brought his entire team to Drake. They lost everybody. He brought his entire team. There were a bunch of D2 guys and a D2 coach. They have all that continuity, kind of bridge the gap.
And they're good.
And there's some good coaches at the D2 level, and they're 10-0. They just won at Kansas State. Very unathletic team. Like you can tell that there's a reason why they were D2, but run beautiful offense, and so they'll be a great story. Like talk about a Cinderella story. Just basically just a D2 team now in D1 if they make the tournament. But yeah, fascinating times throughout college athletics.
Okay, let's go. Let's go Cinderella story. We'll start Friday night. This game is going to look pretty sweet on television. There's no debating that. This guy, I was actually watching some of JMU's bowl game. That pass rusher they have looks like an NFL guy who got the MVP of that game. So clearly that's a good program. Signetti brings them all. Uh, Listen, I just feel like I'm not a huge Notre Dame guy, but my gut tells me this is like got 27-10 or 27-7 written all over it, and they just smother them with defense and running the ball. Now, the curveball in this game on Saturday night, the Penn State game, but definitely the two night games is, in college football, it's not like the NFL. Like Kansas City's going to play a home game now. They're going to play a home game in the play. It's going to be freezing cold. Same thing with Buffalo. Most of college football, you get a cold game maybe early November, but they don't get the frigid weather in December and January because they never play those games. And then their bowl games, if Notre Dame's in the Orange Bowl or whatever, it's fucking beautiful weather. It's like the Super Bowl for them. This game is supposed to be freezing cold. It's just obviously it's these Midwest games. I mean, it's gonna be cold in the middle of December at night, no sun. I think that has to hurt Indiana. That's a passing offense, right? And they've hung their hat on like these outside receivers, Rourke, the back shoulder throws. Uh, I don't know. I mean, this would be the one game where I'd be like, I'd probably hammer laying the points with Notre Dame. What say you?
I'm against you here. This is my favorite underdog of the four. It's the line's coming down. So I have 7.5. I'd want to get 7.5. If you like Notre Dame, wait, because
It was 7 this morning on DraftKings. All lines here are presented on draft by DraftKings. So this was 7. So could that be 6 by kickoff, you think?
I don't think I think it would there would be buyback at 6.5. It probably settles at 7. I liked Indiana over a touchdown. I think they can keep this close. I don't think the cold will bother Indiana. And their quarterback works Canadian, and he played in the MAC and nothing but cold and weather games before this his whole career. So I think he'll be fine. Where I think Indiana can hang in this game is their run defense is legitimate. You go back to that Ohio State game, you go back to the Michigan game. All year, even if you adjust for schedule, this is an elite run defense. Their secondary has talent, but these are like Sun Belt, all conference players. Like some of them came from JMU, some of them came from other conferences. They're not elite NFL caliber corners. So where they'll struggle is, if this game was in a dome and they have to go up against NFL caliber receivers like they did in, the Ohio State game. Like Ohio State couldn't run the ball on them. Now Notre Dame, their offense goes as, Jeremiah Love in their backfield goes. And he's a little banged up. We'll see how healthy he is, but he got hurt in the finale. He's had a lot of time to recover, but reportedly was wearing a brace. But it's their rushing offense. And then Riley Leonard can use his legs too. But the way that you beat this Notre Dame team is you turn Riley Leonard into a drop back passer on known passing downs. Their offense has been bad on third down, specifically, in third and medium to long. And they're like 83rd in the country on third down percentage. Whereas Indiana's offense, I think, is top 20 in the country. You have to stop them on early downs. If you look at Notre Dame's schedule, no one's really been able to do that. Northern Illinois did it. But they haven't really played an elite run defense. I think Indiana's run defense can hold up. You turn Leonard into a pocket passer on known passing situations. I think their defense can hang here. And the Notre Dame defense is very, very good. It's not as elite as, say, an Ohio State that doesn't have the same level of talent up front. They do have a couple of really good interior defensive linemen, but it's not that same caliber. And again, the Notre Dame defense, they didn't really play that many good teams. They played a couple service academies. You played Virginia with a bunch of backups. But you go back to a couple games where I think the Notre Dame defense might be a tad overrated. Louisville went into Notre Dame, moved the ball up and down the field, had fluky turnovers, probably should have won that game.
And they're a pretty good offense, right?
Yeah, and they're a pretty good offense. And they put up 400 plus yards. USC put up nearly 600 yards in the regular season finale against Notre Dame. That's probably the best offense they faced all year. And it was with a backup quarterback. Right? I mean, Miller Moss went to the
Yeah.
transfer portal. Maeda hadn't looked good the previous few weeks against like UCLA, and he looked awful. They also lost their best player, Woody Marks, who's going to play in the NFL on the first play of the game, and they were moving the ball up and down the field at will. So I do think that this Notre Dame defense has some holes. I think this line is a bit too high. Signetti, bunch of time to prepare here. I think I'll have them ready. I think it'll be a close game. Notre Dame also has shaky special teams. Their kicker, they run out a kicker who's hurt, who misses a bunch of kicks every week. I don't know why they keep doing it, but so yeah, I think Indiana hangs here. I think it'll be close. So I took the 7.5.
Okay, let's go to Happy Valley. It's weird. Like when you look at the bracket, you're like, I can see a scenario where Penn State's in the national championship, right? They
Yep.
win this game, then they play Boise, they win that game. In college is not like the NFL, so Kirby doesn't have to say shit, especially off a bye about his quarterback. Is it fair to assume that his quarterback got the Brock Purdy injury and is out, or are we just in the dark? Like,
Yeah, he's
what's your
out.
view?
He might be
Yeah.
back for later, but he's out for that first game. Uh,
Okay,
so
so
which makes it
there's
interesting for.
there's a scenario where it's like Penn State's in the national championship. Yet on an individual game basis, even that Boise game, I'm like, yeah, I can see this thing being weird. Like, yeah, it's like I like Penn State at home, but would it shock me if it's 15-15 in like middle of the third quarter? No, and that whole place is getting tight and it's cold, even though they should dominate in the cold, run game, defense, tight end, like it should translate. That being said, I liked what I saw against Oregon. I know it was, Oregon obviously had some big plays offensively, but Allard's kind of growing on me. The backup quarterback who does play obviously is gone, and it's not, it wasn't like a nefarious situation, kind of like Mendoza's just like, I'm out after he cries on the field. Like, even James Franklin was like, this is bullshit. He didn't want to leave. So it's not like, I don't think there's like dissension or whatever in the locker room. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not some huge SMU consumer. Uh, so watching them against Clemson, obviously they looked like shit early on in that game. Came storming back. In theory, I should like Penn State to dominate this game, but I have a hard time betting on Penn State, even though I kind of like them to like make a run.
Yeah, I don't have a strong feel in this game, to be honest. I mean, SMU is going to go fast.
Or don't they have a good run defense, SMU?
Yes, very good run D, which matters here now. But then you can go back and you can question the level of competition because SMU they avoided all the top teams in the ACC. Then they lost to Clemson. I mean, who else did they play all year? Nobody really. They had such an easy schedule. And then Clemson was able to score pretty easily on them. Uh, so but they do have a
If
good. They
you
have a really
if
good
you
run.
flip flopped SMU and you put SMU versus Texas and Clemson versus Penn State, are those lines like, is then SMU a 12-point dog against Texas and is Clemson a 9-point dog against, like, how do you think that would, like, who do they view as the better team here? Are they basically a coin flip between the two? What we just witnessed, or
Let me
would you
look.
say people think Clemson's going to be better?
I mean, I between Clemson and SMU.
Yeah, like I don't know. Like to me, the 9-point, are they just like, yeah, we don't know if this should be 14 or this should be 6, so we'll just throw like 9 or 10 to get people to bite. Like I feel like they don't quite know with SMU and Clemson where to put them. Like I feel they got a pretty good idea, Tennessee and Indiana, but I feel like with the ACC teams against Texas and Penn State, they're kind of in no man's land with these two lines.
Yeah, I think Texas is a couple points better than Penn State. SMU is a couple better points than Clemson.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I mean, you're right on the bracket. This is why the bracket's broken. Like, you just can't give the four teams automatic buys because Oregon and Georgia beat Texas and Penn State in the conference championship games. Oregon goes undefeated, and they're going to have tougher paths they're going to have a tougher game in the quarterfinals. Texas and Penn State get two games as double-digit favorites. Oregon's going to play the winner of Ohio State, Tennessee. Georgia's going to have to play either Notre Dame or Indiana. Like
Because
that's
ideally
just
in
not
these
right.
4 games, there should be a couple where the lines are like 2 or 3 points, not
Yes. And
seven
and
to
your one
12.
seed shouldn't have the hardest game in the second round,
Yeah.
which they're going to have. So you should either reseed or you just seed 1 through 12. You get your automatic, but you don't get automatic buys. I know. I don't have a really good, strong feel in this game. SMU is going to want to go fast. They don't really run it efficiently. You can't really run it on Penn State.
This is going to be cold too. I mean, it's going to
Yeah,
be
it's
in the
gonna be cold, which
20s.
favors Penn State, but it is at noon, which I think helps SMU a bit. It's not at night in Happy Valley. It's gonna come down, the way to attack this, because you mentioned the SMU run D. Soft schedule, but I do believe in their run defense because their defensive line has dudes. The guys that came from I mean, all of them, I think three of their four starters came from Miami. They were at Miami at one point and they transferred in. So they have like real Power Five guys. They have good safeties too that can come down and defend the run. Where they're weak is at corner. So you have to attack them on the outside. How does Penn State approach this? Like, because their offense is kind of like gimmicky, and it's run first, and then you want to get Warren involved at tight end in different ways. But the weakness of Penn State is their wide receiver room. They don't really have great wide receivers, and that's really how you attack this SMU defense. So I'm not sure it's going to win on the outside between Penn State and SMU. And then can SMU protect? They have a really good back in Brashard Smith, but they don't really run it efficiently, and you can't really run it on Penn State. And the reason they don't run it efficiently is their offensive line isn't very good. Really weak left tackle that they lost from last year. He was really good. And then a center. So they had a really good offensive line last year. Lost their center and left tackle. I haven't been able to replace them. So they don't get a great push. They also struggle to protect at times. So is Penn State just going to get so much pressure and overwhelm Jennings? That would be a bit of my concern as well. So I don't know. I think this line is about right. I have nothing uh, heading into it. If anything, I would think Penn State finds a way. Colton Nicky's a great corner. He's had time to prepare. SMU is going to go fast. I think that they'll find ways to. The Penn State defense, it's very good, but I do think that they're vulnerable on the back end. It's just going to come down to can SMU protect? Because if you look at the Penn State schedule and you just parse out certain games, USC put up 30 on them. And then you saw Oregon. And Oregon has a really good offense, but they put up 40 plus on
Yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah.
So there's there's some opportunities to move the ball. So maybe the over. But as of right now, not a game I'm involved in.
Okay, Texas uh, is a 12-point favorite, which I got to be honest, when I first saw that number, felt a little big to me for a team. Now, they handled A&M, right? The only way they got back into it was with Ewers, a couple turnovers. But, like, they're not scoring 40 points a game. So you look at that game. Now, A&M on the road, good defense. You look at the Arkansas game, they won 20 to 10. The Florida game, they mollywopped them. That was kind of a perfect storm. But the Vanderbilt game was a struggle. Obviously, they lost the Georgia game. Even the Oklahoma game, that was a tight game till like the last couple minutes in the first half, and there was like back-to-back fumbles, and then it just kind of unraveled. But to me, 12 points for an offense that I just don't trust the quarterback. Now, their defense is good. And physically, I mean, they have NFL dudes all over that defensive line. But I don't know. I mean, Cade Klubnik, he's played well down the stretch. Obviously, his legs are a big factor, so he can run and pass. That some of those young wide receivers look like they're coming on. It's a perfect spot if you just kind of look at Dabo, underdog. No one thinks they can do shit. He just showed in the conference championship game, like they jumped out to him. They were bludgeoning that team, right? And then I obviously kind of let off the foot off the gas, and they came back. uh, SMU fans will be in your DMs, be like, the refs were against us. Like, no, you were getting your ass kicked. Uh, I I don't know, man. My first it's like 12 points feels like a lot against this Texas team that's being treated like they're fucking Oregon or something.
It was the first game in like 70 years that Clemson didn't have
I
a
know.
penalty in the game.
I know.
But
The stats.
there wasn't any penalties called in that game. Um, I think
Was
SMU
it an
only had a
ACC
couple.
crew? Were they trying to get Clemson to win so they get SMU in and
Yeah,
get
I
the
mean, it
two
worked
tickets?
out for them, whatever they were trying to do. They got SMU to come back, and then he couldn't keep Alabama out. So it worked out for the ACC financially. My numbers actually lean Texas
Because
a
just
bit.
big picture, it would be bad if they both get destroyed. If they both
Yes.
lose by like 15, 20 points, it's bad.
Yep. Yeah, that you get. There's going to be that bias, right or not, with the committee on a year-to-year basis based on what happened the year prior. And then the SEC talking heads, if SMU, you want Twitter to get insufferable. and I'm in SEC country, but if SMU and Clemson get blown out, you're gonna hear from all the SEC people after the weekend's over about how Alabama should have gotten in. Um, yeah, I actually I don't think this Clemson team is that great, and I had them to make the college football playoff. Got lucky because Miami lost. If you look, anytime they stepped up in class this year, it didn't go great. I mean, this is a team that lost at home to Louisville. They got blown out by Georgia. They fought for a half, and then they beat SMU. You got to give them credit for that, but I don't think SMU is in the elite tier of teams. And the reason is they just don't have as much talent as they used to, and that's because they don't hit the portal. And so it's just not as talented of the talent disparity in this game. Even just going like the offensive line disparity is massive. Texas, who should get their left tackle back, Banks, healthy, who's probably the best offensive lineman in college football. He missed that Georgia game. Their offensive line for Texas is unbelievable, and they're going to get protection. They're going to be able to run the ball, and I think that's going to like set up all of the RPO easy passes for yours. Because what my fear is when you back Texas as a big favorite, because you're right, like their offense in these big games this year, because they also had a soft schedule. Like for an SEC team, they have the softest schedule of any team of who they avoided. And if you look, like what happens is yours will have like a couple head scratching turnovers a game, and they can't score in the red zone. They're just incapable of doing it, and it was a problem last year as well. So that's hard to cover if you turn the ball over a couple times and then you're settling for a couple field goals. Hard to cover a big number. But I just think at the line of scrimmage they're going to dominate. I don't think Clemson's going to be able to run the ball, and their running back Maffa's banged up. They need Klubnik to have like a perfect game, and one of their, a guy like Wesco, they're going to need some of their young receivers to step up, but it's just such a talent disparity in this game. And yours, extra time off, does he get healthier? Like he's been dealing with an ankle injury. And then do you see more arch, which I would, or like, so I don't know how Texas is going to handle this. Do they wait and for like the arch packages when you're not as big of a favorite, right? And don't show it as much, or do you just, hey, we're gonna show it every game from here on out? Because I actually think Arch is a better fit for this offense because he's a better runner for the RPO style. But I just think they're gonna be able to run. Like Clemson's run D all year has been not been good. And once if Texas can establish the run, everything else becomes so much easier. Safeties have to start to come down, and then your screen, your quick pass game, everything from there. Then it makes it easier for yours, and you don't have to make him, you know, a drop back passer, known passing situations where he might make a mistake or two. So, and then this Texas defense is kind of built to stop this Clemson offense, and we've seen it before. Texas, when TCU made that run with Garrett Riley, their offensive coordinator, Pete Kwiatkowski shut him down, the defensive coordinator for Texas. So yeah, I lean Texas. I'm having trouble pulling the trigger right now just because I'm worried about the red zone. I'm worried about Ewers making a boneheaded mistake or two. But this is a big, big talent disparity that many casual bettors who have been following college football might not be. It's like, hey, Clemson, I'm going to take the 12. Dabo can play his cards here, and he's great as an underdog. But as of right now, I'm actually leaning towards the favorite.
Well, I think if you told me you could flip quarterbacks, like yours was on Clemson and Klubnik was on, because I think Klubnik, as you watch after that Georgia game, you're like, this guy. I mean, you're Dabby, you need to cut this guy. By the end of the season, he felt like one of the more improved players in the country. I
Yep.
think I heard Danny Cannell or someone say that if you look at 21 and 22, Ewers was the number one quarterback coming out in 21. He was the number one quarterback, Klubnik in 22. Two Texas guys. They played each other, I think, in the state championship, either in 19 or 20. I mean, these
Yep.
are like heralded all-time great quarterback prospects coming out the state of Texas, which is like quarterback state for producing these guys. And I just think Klubnik is a much better player, especially the way he's playing right now when you dual threat. But like you said, I mean, are they talented enough? That is a major question mark because there's no disputing Texas's roster. It's just the quarterback play. I mean, even that A&M game, which A&M obviously, relative to the rest of college football, has an elite roster too, and it just felt like, God, Texas is fucking overwhelming them here. And so it's like,
Yep.
and all Ewers has to be is kind of that, kind of Alex Smith game manager, but sometimes he's like, I'm Patrick Mahomes, and that's where and you feel Sark sometimes who's grown on me a lot. They go shots of him. It's like he fucking wants to wring his neck. It's like, what are you doing? But the problem is Arch, and you and I have talked about this. If he was their version of like what Trevor Lawrence was or whoever, he would already be in. I think they don't think he's quite as good as the hype. That's why I think they've kind of eased it in. If he was as good as the way he's talked about, I think he'd already been their starting quarterback.
Yeah, but his legs and using
Yeah,
this
yeah,
package is
for sure.
definitely. I think they're going to use it more. Curious to see how much in this game in particular, because if you look at their path again, Texas has an easy path. Do you wait and to like really show everything that you're going to show with his packages? But yeah, I agree with you, and we'll see if like yours is if that ankle injury that was contributing to things, and he looks a little better
He's
here
had three
and
weeks
can use his
off, right?
legs. Yeah, so that could be another angle as well. But definitely an interesting game. Klubnik has been playing a lot better. His offensive line he's going to be under pressure. He's going to have to use his legs. He's going to have to hit some explosive plays downfield because the difference in this offensive line, that's going to be the clearest thing that you'll see, I think, in this game. And that might end up being the difference. But Texas for they find ways to make games close at times against like their special teams aren't good. Their red zone offense isn't good, and then Ewers will make a couple boneheaded throws, but they are so much more talented. So be an
Well, I guess
interesting game to
one thing
watch.
looking at these matchups, Indiana-Notre Dame didn't play conference championship weekend. SMU-Penn State did. Clemson and Texas did. Tennessee and Ohio State didn't. So they basically, neutralized any rest advantage of a team that had to play in that spot and then a team that didn't. So
Yep.
Tennessee, Ohio State, uh, like this feels like auto hammer Tennessee. You know, when you just factor in their strengths, they can run the ball and they have a fantastic defensive line. And obviously, Ohio State, who I saw Chip's quotes all the days are running together. It might have been last week or might have been earlier this week, where he's like, "We've gone over that Michigan game with a fine tooth comb. We realize how we screwed up." Part of where I think everyone thought they screwed up is like, guys, they're fucking Will Johnson's in the training room. They've had a bunch of guys drafted the last couple of years in the secondary. You have elite wide receivers throw the ball, which was true. It was crazy they didn't. They kept like running the ball up the middle. I think at one point in time it was like 14 runs, just right up literally between the guards.
So like
And
four
in
with four NFL guys on the defensive line.
yeah, it's like their only strength on their team right now. Tennessee, uh, I think a little bit like Michigan, like their passing game. I mean, Nico, everyone like kind of bet the farm on him. I know I was one of those guys like this guy, get ready. It's like kind of like Josh Rosen early on. It's like this guy's going to take the world by storm, and then by the end of the year, you're like, oh, let's pump the brakes on his future. But from a defensive line standpoint, it's got to be tough. I mean, they're missing their center, they're missing their offensive line. The pressure in this game, unlike a lot of teams from the South, right? Like a Miami that if they would have had to go to Penn State, it's a lot like Tua and that crew when they got to go to Green Bay. It's a huge. Knoxville's cold. Now it might not be Ohio State cold, but they're not sitting in 80-degree weather right now. And their style of play is a little bit like the Rams and the Niners. It's like their shit translates, whether they're playing in the cold or whether they're playing in a warm weather, kind of bowl environment if they win this game. I don't know. I just love Tennessee in this spot, 7.5. And Herb Street said it the night that they did the bracket. Like, if this is 7-0 going into halftime or something, Ohio State's loud, that place is going to be so fucking mad, and that environment could get ugly. So if Ohio State's going to win this game, like I don't think it's Penn State where they're down 10-0 and they come storming back. Like they need an early lead, they need an early touchdown. Everyone get excited and get that crowd behind them because that crowd would turn on not on the team but on Ryan Day.
Yeah, this game is very fascinating, and I agree with that point. I think that's the key to this game, which makes it tough to bet. Where is Ohio State at mentally, and then where do they go if they start slow? Because I was just in Cleveland this past weekend talking to a bunch of Ohio State fans, and they're all like, Ryan Day's got to go, and
They want him to
there's
lose this game, right? So they can
yep,
like go try to offer Vrabel $100 million.
they'll be like if they start slow, there'll be fire Ryan Day chants and in the crowd, and then like what I think part of what happened against Michigan is Ryan Day wanted to win that game so bad, and the play calling was awful too. But just they were so tight, like there was so much we have to get our revenge, and then Michigan played so loose. Like Ohio State was so much more talented. Play calling is bad, yes, but I think that they were all like so overwhelmed with trying to win and just weren't playing football. Could that happen again if they're tight here, like and they start slow? The start in this game is massive because you also want to make Nico throw it, not let Tennessee get the run game going. Look, the Tennessee offensive line has issues too. I don't think Tennessee's gonna have a ton of success on offense. I mean, Nico in his road games this year, like against Vandy, he was fine, but that was basically a home game. He went to Georgia, he was bad, 20 of 33 for 160. At Arkansas, where they lost against a bad D, he was 17 of 29 for 158. And then at Oklahoma, who ended up being a bad team, 13 to 21 for 190 through, yeah, it just wasn't great. And all year, it just wasn't overly impressive. And their receivers are pretty banged up too. We'll see how healthy they are. They've had like non-contact practice, non-contact jerseys on in practice. So this is just going to come down to the start because I don't think Tennessee is going to score a bunch. Now, what makes this fascinating to me, because initially when I saw this matchup, I said under because I think both defensive lines will dominate. And I don't see, and Will Howard's been dreadful under pressure. His completion percentage drops, I think, from 78 to 52% when he's under pressure. And the Ohio State offensive line, they lost the two most important players, their center and their left tackle. So, but I said under, and then Ohio State plays really slow. Tennessee plays fast, but they're just not that explosive this year because Nico, he's just not there yet. So I said D lines dominate this game under. But my worry is Ohio State, do they come out here? Because I saw the Chip Kelly comments too. They tried to run it way too much. The one drive they had successful, and I'm surprised they didn't do this in the second half, 2-minute drill. They had to do this at the end of the first half. They were throwing it and going fast, and they went right down the field and scored a touchdown. Those are only then they didn't score the rest of the game. So are they going to say now, okay, we're going up against another elite D. Let's go hurry. Let's go with more tempo and let's throw it more because the Tennessee weakness of their defense is their secondary. And then you try to tire out their pass rush by going with more tempo. So that's what scares me off the under a bit. Um, and then another thing to keep in mind here is it looks like Ohio State's going to make changes along the offensive line. They've had a couple weeks to prepare. You might see there's this a kid Montgomery, another kid Padilla. Might see two new young kids in there in the interior. So how does that work out? Does it solve some of the issues? Is it just a mess? There's not that much continuity, but there has been some time that a lot of uncertainty in this game. I wouldn't blame anyone for taking the points. My numbers actually, I'm really low on Tennessee. My numbers actually show a little bit of value in Ohio State, but I truly believe this comes down to the start. Like,
Who's a better coach? Like if you had a program and all things are equal, would you choose Josh Heupel and his staff or Ryan Day and his staff?
that's a great question.
I feel like I know more about Josh Heupel. Like he's done more with less. I mean, when he took over Tennessee, they sucked. What he did at UCF, like let's face it. I mean, Ryan Day took over a fucking Ferrari, and it's no longer a Ferrari anymore. They're
Yeah, I
not
mean,
bad, but I think it's like no one cares that you beat Minnesota and Iowa. Like no one gives a shit. Can't beat Michigan, and he just loses all these big games. Honestly,
yeah,
his uh, performance against Oregon was actually kind of impressive. I thought they actually played pretty well, but
but they
obviously
still
they just
botched the end game.
exactly.
He turtles up too much in big games.
He's tight.
Um, but Heupel hasn't gotten to like that next level yet. And at least like Day's gotten close. I'll say it's a push as of right now.
Is
I'll
Ohio
say
State
this.
favored in this game if it's in Tennessee?
Yes, but it
3
would
points,
be. Let
two.
me see what I have home field. That would be like. I mean, this line is saying 3.5. Small favorite under a field goal probably. Um, maybe -2, -1.5. Um, and yeah, I'll say this game is gonna will will decide it for me now. Even if Tennessee just covers, I'll probably say Heupel. So fascinating game. All eyes on that start, as you
I
alluded
agree.
to. Like
I actually think
if
it's
Ohio
easier
State gets
sometimes
out,
to
what's
lose a
that?
bowl game. I think it's easier to lose a bowl game sometimes than these home playoff games because it's like kind of a way half your fans are there. This is just like a normal game for Ohio State, right? Like their local radio, the post game show. It just would. He drives to his house. You know,
Yep.
you would rather lose this game at like the Orange Bowl, right, against Tennessee than lose it at your fucking home stadium.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's going to be decent amount of Tennessee fans. I'm curious to see that. But in a way, from a numbers perspective, this isn't true. Like it's, 6 point difference. But in a way, Ohio State might have benefited from going on the road here because you get away from, there's so much noise right now. And there's just around campus, it's all like, you got to win and all the noise on the talk radio. It's like you said, sometimes it's good to get away from
Agreed.
that and go on the road. Now obviously Knoxville's not a fun place to play, but yeah, all eyes on the start there. I wouldn't blame anyone for taking the points.
Okay, the Chiefs are either going to have like the craziest 16-1 season you've ever seen, or they're going to lose a couple games here down the stretch. Now, it looks like Mahomes is good to go. He practiced in full, at least on Wednesday. Or I guess that would that have been Tuesday. Whatever. I mean, he clearly avoided major injury, which feels like he pulls off sometimes. He's got a little NBA to him where you just feel like, oh my God, is this season over? And then like a week later, he's playing in the game. I do think this Texans matchup though is kind of tough for them, given that I mean they got two guys that could end up with 15 sacks coming off the edge where the Chiefs have struggled, and even if Mahomes is playing, he's not 100%, and he naturally kind of gimps around even when he's healthy, right? It kind of looks like obviously the Texans have had a disappointing season relative to the hype, though they won the division pretty easily. I like the Texans a lot here, plus 3.5. Plus, you just factor in the Chiefs. Every game they play in is close, but just in terms of the exact matchup, that pass rush against a somewhat hobbled Mahomes against an offensive line that is just really struggled all season long protecting them. So I I think they're bound to lose one of these two games. Whether it's Saturday, you would say they'd be more likely to lose the game on the road, right? Pittsburgh short week. But I wonder if this game kind of is the one that kind of bites them.
I don't mind the Texans here taking the points now that it's over 3. It's funny, this a big regret of mine actually was not taking the Chiefs when this line was Texans -3 early in the week. And like everyone assumed Mahomes was going to be out. And I said to myself, Mahomes, he's had like 6 ankle injuries in the past and he's never missed a game. And I immediately tweeted out, like, they're gonna have to lock him away to keep him out of the game. You remember that playoff game when he's like would
Oh
refuse to go
yeah.
to the locker room. So I was like, he's definitely gonna play. I don't know why I didn't. I should have just taken the points with the Chiefs, knowing that he's probably gonna play and then I can come back. But now this
I
line,
think he would have done the same thing in that game against the Browns if it was tied and they had to win it to get the number one seed. But they were up 21-7. The fucking team couldn't move the ball, and he's like, "Yeah, cool, just let Carson
yeah,
go in."
yeah. So now this is at 3.5. And Mahomes isn't gonna be at 100%. And I guess there's still an outside shot he doesn't play. There's also an outside shot I think he's going to, but there's also an outside shot he gets hurt. Like there's a higher percentage that he hurts that ankle even more. And when you're going up against this pass rush, can the Texans score? Where this offense needs to figure it out. They they're not going to run on Kansas City. You got to throw on them. Their secondary is vulnerable. They've had some injuries back there, and their pass D's been vulnerable since. But the Texans every week, it's like, where is this passing offense? I mean, even last week against Miami, they had like 190 total yards of offense. So can they? And a lot of it is they have the worst early down offense in the NFL. They run it way too much on early downs. In this game in particular, you need to find your passing offense if you're going to want to win the Super Bowl, which should be your goal. And in order to win the Super Bowl, you're going to have to beat the likes of Lamar, Josh Allen, Mahomes. You're not going to win these games 20-17. You need to find your offense. You're already in the playoffs. You need to find your offense before the playoffs. This is the perfect game to do it. Throw on early downs. Let Stroud get out of his funk and throw it. And this is kind of like a risk-free opportunity to do that. If you lose this game, who cares? You're still going to win your division. You're not getting the 1 seed. You can prove to yourself you won it. If not, you can be like, all right, we need to make these adjustments. But yeah, the 3.5 points with this Texans defense, which has been dominant, and they have their 2 corners, Lassiter and Stingley. I mean, they rank in the top. Both of them are in the top 3 in catch rate allowed. They've been great. And then you have this edge rush that's going to get after Mahomes and a very vulnerable offensive line. Tooney helped kicking him out the left tackle against Cleveland, but he was still under fire the whole game. So yeah, lower scoring game against a team that usually just wins by 2 or 3. I would take the points here.
I don't really have a feel for this other game. I mean, I guess you just naturally take Tomlin and the points. Steelers have kind of dominated this matchup. I think what have they won 8 of the last 9.
Yep.
Uh, I think that Eagles game rattled me. I was like so close. It's like I think I'm taking. I was about right before the game kicked off to hammer Pittsburgh money line, and I kind of got cold feet. And then like 10 minutes into the game, you knew like thank God I didn't do that. I mean they couldn't cover anybody. So now TJ Watt's a little banged up. It's a huge game for the Ravens. I don't know. I mean I don't really have a great feel. It's like to me, the Eagle game was a pretty enlightening experience on Pittsburgh, kind of got exposed. Now, I'm not putting too much thought into the Ravens against the Giants. I mean, you put them when they're a little motivated against a bad team, they will fucking bludgeon you. Lamar has had his issues against the Steelers, obviously. What are your thoughts? I mean, your Ravens, you win this game, you're right back in the mix to win this division.
Yeah. My gut says that the Ravens are going to win and cover this game, but I know better. I know that these games are always close, no matter what. I mean, since 2008 when Harbaugh got to Baltimore, favorites of 3 or more in this matchup of Harbaugh Tomlin are 2, 19, and 3 against the spread. That's less than 10%. 2, 19, and 3. Harbaugh is a favorite of a field goal or more against the Steelers. 0, 11, and 2 against the spread. 27 of these of 33 matchups have been decided by one possession. The average score in these games is 19.5 to 19.4. Over half of the games have been decided by a field goal or less. They're just always close. There's so much familiarity. Tomlin usually does a good job against mobile quarterbacks. Now, the reason I can't bet this yet, like I think this line should be 7 if Watt and Pickens are out. So I can't really bet this game without knowing their status. Watt is so important. I mean, if you look historically, their defense falls off a cliff without him. He not only is he important for he'll make a game-changing play almost once a game, but he draws so much attention, so it frees up other guys. It's also solid against the run. I think their defense it gives up like a touchdown more historically when he's been out of the lineup. And then Pickens, they need him. This offense is not very efficient with Russ. They need to hit explosive plays downfield, right? It's like run, 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 punt, rely on your D, run, 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 punt, hit an explosive play, score a touchdown. Like that's just how the Steelers want to play. And Pickens is the key piece to that. So does he play? I don't know. So it's like your most important offensive player and your most important defensive player. I think that's the difference in whether this game is close or not. I think because the Ravens, yeah, they're 1-8 against the Steelers. By the way, this is the first time Lamar will play in Baltimore against the Steelers with fans in the stands. First time ever.
It's
The only
crazy.
other time he did it was in 2020 in COVID. The other 4 matchups since he's been in the league, hurt, week 18 rested, week 18 rested. Pretty crazy. But his numbers against the Steelers are not good. But I will say this Ravens defense is trending up and they're passy. Their run D's been good all year and they're getting healthy again on the defensive line. But they moved Kyle Hamilton back to safety and he's allowed over the last 5 games, he was playing linebacker, edge, corner. He's playing all over the place and doing it at all pro level. But they said our back end of our defense is broken. And that's how good this kid is. And they just put him, he's just playing
Yeah.
deep safety a lot
Stud.
more. He's allowed 1 catch in 5 games for 3 yards. So they put him back there. They benched their veteran safeties who were playing really poorly, guys like Williams, and they put Ardarius Washington back there. He's been great. And then Wiggins, their rookie, is starting to play really well. He along with Lassiter and Stingley I mentioned, he's top 3 in catch rate allowed. So, and then they have Humphrey just manning the slot. So their pasties really coming together. And so this is like a defense that's trending in the right direction for the playoffs. Kind of going a little under the radar because, it was the Giants. But their pasties actually better than people might think because it was a mess early on in the year. They couldn't, anything deeper and over the middle was a disaster. There's still some weak areas in the middle of the field because of linebackers, but trending up. But man, I also it's worth mentioning because this was decided the first meeting. The kickers, he's my guy, Tucker. But again, tough stating the kicking. Steelers have the edge here in kicker, and if this is going to be a close game, maybe that's the difference. But I can't do any. This is a weird week in the NFL. There are so many injuries, so many key injuries. From Mahomes to Pickens, Watt, Geno Smith, and then you have all these backup quarterbacks playing. It's a crazy week. I just need to know the status of Watt and Pickens. If they're both out, I like the Ravens, but I might not bet it just because I've been watching this rivalry for 15 years, and no matter what these teams look like, who's out, it's just close somehow. So
Okay,
I'm
I got a couple.
conflicted.
Yeah, I got a couple more games for you. Speaking of injuries, the Niners, I guess Kyle just, Guerrero, who played last week, probably out now with a different injury. So they're on like their 17th running back. I think Miami fucking stinks. And the Niners, for a bad team, are still going to try to finish hard. Like if you're Kyle, you desperately, even if you're going to miss the playoffs, want to finish 9-8 because it's not like you have the second pick in the draft. They're drafting 15 right now, so they're going to try really hard down the stretch. But Trent Williams is out now for good. You got Bosa banged up. I mean, it's really difficult, and they're favored on the road. I don't know. That's a game that I love the Niners, getting a point against Miami, but you just have to wonder, like, does it eventually catch up to them? Maybe they're a little motivated after what happened with Campbell. And the other game that stands out to me is like, this happened in reverse to the Rams 2 weeks ago when the Bills came out. They get a massive win and they just kind of lay an egg. Those cross country flights, I used to make them from Philly to the Bay or Sacramento. It's a long time in the air, even if you're flying like these guys are flying. And whether you're gaining hours or losing hours, I do wonder a little bit. The Rams, they control their own destiny with those last two games. Now Seattle's kind of in shambles. Hell, Seattle could easily lose this weekend to Minnesota. I don't want to say lay an egg, but just come out flat a little against this Jets team, who's just shown a little more life. I got that thing circled as just a potential to be a weird result, and definitely a weird early game. Like the Rams look flat.
You well, you nailed two bets that I made. I bet the 49ers reluctantly because I who knows who's showing up in that game, but I trust the 49ers more to show up, and they have extra rest here. Hopefully they get a couple guys back like Mustafa, Bosa, because of the extra rest.
And
But
Purdy and Kyle are like a combo deal. They need to justify with the owner, like we're going to pay you, right? Because
yep,
Kyle wants to
and
pay him, Purdy wants his money. They got to play well.
Dolphins play a ton of zone. Purdy usually rips that up, and Miami's beat up. Their offensive line, they have no tackles. Waddle, I think, is going to be out. That means they only have three healthy receivers. You got Tyreek Hill, Washington, and River Craycraft on the entire roster. I mean, they're going to bring some guys up, but that's it. Just bracket Hill, who's not the same player right now, and the Dolphins team can't run the ball right now because their offensive line injuries. So it's tough, but I like the 49ers on the road in a matchup of two teams that basically got eliminated last week. And then, yeah, I bet the Jets plus 3.5. It's too many points. I can't get to this number. Like the Jets they're not great, but they've lost seven one possession games. Like most of the time they're in games. They
Yeah.
were unlucky early in the year. Their offense is finally showing some life. Like Rodgers looks a bit better. I think he was dealing with an injury earlier in the season. The last four games, he's eight touchdowns, one pick, 68% completion percentage. They're averaging 27 points per game. It
Devontae looked
looks like they're
awesome,
second.
obviously, last week.
Yeah, and this Rams secondary, you can get. I think some of their younger guys are hitting the wall a little bit on defense. And yeah, this is just a sleepy spot for the Rams, who on the road all year. What have they done? This is an indoor team. When they go on the road outdoors, not the same offense. On the road all year, this team, I think they covered one time. I mean, this team, they lost at the Bears. At the Patriots was a close game till late. At the Saints was a close game until very late. Um, and at the Seahawks, they won. They should have lost that game. They won in overtime. They come out flat on the road almost every week. So I think this is another spot where that happens.
Stafford
And
was horrendous in the first half against the Niners.
yep. And if you go back to last year, this same exact spot happened. The Rams went on their late season surge, and the week before playing the 49ers, which was like a huge game for the playoffs, I think the Rams needed the win. They went to New York. Now they didn't play the Jets, they played the Giants. And I think Tyrod Taylor was starting. And they won, but they were like -5. They won 26-25. And the Tyrod Taylor almost picked them off. And yeah, I mean, that game was super close right till the end. So I think this game is close. This line is just too high because people see how bad, like the Jets record, the Rams have been surging, but I don't think the Rams are, 5, 6 points better than the Jets, who are showing life of late. And you get a playoff team in at home. I think they'll carry here. And you got some corners who can match up with the Rams receivers. So yeah, I think too many points here.
Like where your head's at, Stuckey. Well, let's enjoy a historic first year of the playoffs, Saturday and Friday night football at Notre Dame, at Ohio State. That's pretty cool. If you would have told someone that 5 years ago, would have put a lot of smiles on people's faces. And now gambling, we get to bet on it legally all across the country. So have a great weekend, Stuckey, and go Jets.
Yeah, by the way, fun nugget, it'll be the first Friday home game for Notre Dame since 1900 when they beat the Chicago Physicians and Surgeons 5-0. And um I think someone sent me that. I don't even know if that's true. It could be but I know that let's see, it's the first time it's on a network. First time a Notre Dame home game is not on the NBC since 1990.
My guess is the Chicago physicians and surgeons lack some team speed. We're always in the right spot. Very smart group, but probably not too dynamic in space. If I had to give a scouting report without watching the film, would you guess that would probably they probably didn't have much speed on the outside? Would be my guess, and
I
not much
don't
bulk in the middle.
I think my friend might have been sending me a fake tweet,
If
which is
that's true,
funny.
that's fucking incredible. It's very believable. I'm gonna believe it. I mean, it's 120 years ago, so
I know it's the first one on a Friday in forever. I think my
I can
friend
see
might have
Kyle
trolled me.
Shanahan liking one of the quarterbacks on the physicians and surgeons team.
All right,
Okay.
enjoy the weekend, brother. I'll see you
I'll
next
see you.
week.
I'll see you, brother.